Our final presentation today is, I think, one of the most fun, not the least of which because it has pictures of Christmas in India, which is super delightful. Our next presenter is a member of our Lutherans for Life national staff. Scott Licht has been with us for 12 years.
Yep.
12 years before that, you heard him mention that, well, I guess it was last night. He has 30 years of experience working in IT, human resources, and you should ask him sometime about the days he spent as a stripper. He'll be glad to tell you about that. What Scott does not want me to tell you is that he also has a lot of education and degrees, several master's degrees, in addition to being certified as an ordained pastor in the NALC and the LCMC. So he has several full-time jobs, one of which is being a parish pastor, and that allows him some opportunity to be able to put into practice in a very special way the work of Lutherans for Life. But Scott is our CFO, COO. Years ago, I would have said Scott is the guy who really runs Lutherans for Life. But now Lutherans for Life has so much going on that no one of us alone could run it. But Scott is the one who keeps it running. He also has some liberties as a non-LCMS pastor that allow him to reach out to and be in congregations outside of the LCMS, and so carry the message of Lutherans for Life to our brothers and sisters in other denominations. So we're grateful for that. Scott has a variety of interests, talents, and abilities, and you're going to really enjoy the heart of the message that he has to share about his time in India. So please join me in welcoming Pastor Scott Licht.
Thank you all, and I know how difficult it is to be the last speaker, and how I heard you talking before about the Far Side cartoon of Mr. Wilson, my brain is full. It's probably the way that you're feeling right now. Tim was wonderful, and as was Evan and Mrs. Skoog. So anyway, this will. I used to watch Monty Python all the time, and now for something completely different, because this will be completely different. But I hope you can connect the dots, because we're going to talk about how people on the other side of the world think about life, but it also gives us some context then too. And so I promise that this will not be, yep, on day 3 of our trip, we saw this and that. This will not be vacation slides for the next however long. But to give you some kind of context, I say that this, in 2-3 weeks, I'll be making my 11th trip to India. And I never would have thought that I would even make one trip to India 10 years ago. But God grabs people and sends them where He wants them to go, and I'm very blessed to be able to do this. And so, just to give you some kind of context of where India is, what it, you would think with 1.4 billion people, and it's taken over China as the largest nation on the planet right now. You would think that it would be the size of China, but it's not. It's little. To get there, I live in the middle of Iowa, so I get on a plane in Des Moines, and so my next trip, I'll get on a plane in Des Moines Monday morning, and then the following Wednesday afternoon, I will get to where I'm headed in India. With stops in Europe and either Amsterdam or Paris, because I fly Delta all the time, and then get down to Delhi or Mumbai, and go to Hyderabad, and ever smaller planes. Finally end up in Rajahmundry or Vijayawada. So that's kind of where we're headed. From Des Moines to my friends over in India, there's an 11.5-hour time difference. So you can't get much more on the other side of the planet than just going to see my friends over in India. So just now we're narrowing in a little bit. This is the area that we're going to be talking about. I'm going to show you what an orphanage looks like and where I go, one of the orphanages that I visit. So the state of Andhra Pradesh, which actually has a very strong Lutheran background for about 150, approaching 200 years now. It has been very Lutheran. The nation of India, not so much. Prime Minister Modi is a great friend commercially of the United States and politically with the United States, but he is all about make India Hindu again, and so the pressure to stamp out Christianity is growing. After I got done preaching for the ninth service in my last trip, the pastor said, "Oh, by the way, what you just did was illegal," because it is illegal for a non-native Indian to preach in a church over there, in the Christian churches. But I still plan to do it again in a couple weeks. So this is where we'll be looking at. Before that, fly into either Mumbai. Used to be called Bombay. They're changing back to the Indian names rather than the British names. So switching back to Mumbai instead of Bombay. Or up here, Delhi is way up north. That's where the Taj Mahal is, and so forth. So I'll be talking about Swen, Doogie, and Abdul. And so just so you get some context of where these people are, Swen, spoiler alert, is not Norwegian, as you will see very soon. His full name is Swen Kumar Pulavarthi. And you'll get to see a picture of Swen and his wife Arne in a little bit. Just kind of give you the lay of the land a little bit. Fruit is plentiful. This is an agricultural area that I visit. So farmers markets up and down the streets of the villages and so forth. So this is very plentiful. Rice is a huge crop that's grown there. This is a rice paddy. We also have corn. Coming from Iowa, I felt really at home with all the corn that's grown there. But we also have the little peppers growing there too. These are the hot ones. My taste buds experience different things when I'm there than when I'm back home. These are some women who are out in the fields gathering the peppers, and they are picking their pecks of peppers. And yeah, one at a time. Sometimes they will even put a sheet over their heads and over the plant to keep the sun from beating down on them all day long. But they are tough. They are just sitting out there all day long. They'll ride out there in the morning on the back of a tuk-tuk, and there'll be 15 of them hanging onto this tuk-tuk, and they'll get out to the field and they'll pick all day and then ride back, and that is their source of income. So they'll do everything they can during the harvest season, and then there's not much else to do the rest of the year. They'll find odd jobs where they can. This is some of the produce of their work. These are all those little peppers. They'll lay them out and let them dry for days and weeks at a time, and keep stirring them every once in a while to help them dry out more fully. You can even see pictures of these if you Google this area in India. You can see the satellite photos. You can see these big areas of peppers that are drying out. This is some rice. Maybe the rice that we eat. My last trip there, sorry, it's advancing automatically here. My last trip, no, I take that back. The trip before last, they had just had a pretty heavy rainstorm right before I got there, and they plant their rice and they harvest, and they are hoping against hope that they will have a good harvest. And they had it all gathered together and in their bags, and then the rains came. And so now all of that rice got wet again. So they laid it out on these huge tarps right alongside the road. And people would drive over it. But they would try to avoid it, but the traffic there is just nuts. Sometimes you have to do what you have to do. This is a very common sight. These are cattle being driven from place to place. This, as I said, this is a very common sight as you're driving along. And here in Scripture we hear about the discerning the sheep from the goats. And the sheep there do not look at all like the sheep that we have. They look like goats. They really do. And the difference is whether their ears are up and their tail is up, or whether their ears are down and their tail is down. That's how you tell the sheep from the goats there. They look very, very similar. And so these herds are driven to market or to the pastures or whatever pretty regularly. This is what the infrastructure looks like. The fire marshals in the United States would go absolutely nuts, as would OSHA. But this is a very common sight there. And all of the electricity is 220 volts. It's not 110. And the amperage is way up there too. So it's a little dangerous. But the worship is just amazing. All different styles, all different voices, but their hearts, they love to get together and sing praises. This is Dake's church. I'll show you Dake here, a picture of Dake in a minute. But this is Dake's church. The women and the men are segregated during the services, and the children kind of float back and forth between. So Dake's church, here's David's church. With this floor was dirt up until this last visit, and now they finally have a solid floor there. So all different manner and all different worship types of locations. I threw this picture in because this young woman had she was losing her eyesight. She got a fever from a mosquito, and it was basically the bacteria or whatever this disease was just eating away her eyes, literally. And so, when I was stand near her, you could smell the rotting flesh. It was just, but she was so joyful, and she was so content and so glad to be able to come and worship. And her mom would bring her to church, and so she's just an encouragement to me, and I hope to you maybe just hearing that little bit of her story. But there is not very readily accessible health care, and it's there's no such thing as health insurance, at least for most of the people that I visit. If you heard about the caste system, almost all, not almost, all of the Christians would be in that very lowest, the Dalit class. And so, or caste, so they are the lowest of the low. But again, they're content, and they love their Savior. They love getting together and worshiping and hearing the Word of God, and they love when a 63-year-old from Iowa comes over and visits them, and I love visiting them. Yes, sir.
So if you're of a higher caste and you become a Christian, are you then a Dalit?
Yes. You are ostracized. You are the worst of the worst by converting. Yeah, absolutely. So to think about life issues, now we get out of the travel log portion, and let's talk about life issues. And to understand, I think it's important for us to, I always try when I go to a different place I try to understand the culture there, because I don't want to, well, this is how we do it in America, so this must be how everybody does it. No, we are guests, and we are visiting them, and it's my job to understand how they might understand what I'm saying. So understanding cultures is important. We live in a culture that's based out, well, here, sorry, I got ahead of myself. 3 types of cultures we're going to talk about. Guilt, innocence, shame, honor, and fear, power. Those are kind of the 3 cultures that we, generically, that we have around the world. So, in the guilt, innocence type of culture, it's all about internal judgment. And it's very individualist. And this is the type of culture that we live in. I judge for myself whether I'm guilty of something or whether I'm innocent of something, and I feel guilty about doing something, and we are motivated by feeling guilty or trying to feel innocent. And we hear this in church all the time, right? We try to, the goal, the heresy is trying to declare ourselves innocent, even though we recognize our own guilt. And Christ died to declare us innocent. So we can fully understand the guilt innocence type of culture, but the shame honor culture is a little harder for us to identify with. This shame culture would be the culture in which Jesus lived. It's the culture of the Middle East. It's also the culture of India. And so it's all about external judgment. What do other people think about what I did? How am I seen by other people? And that is paramount. Being seen as a good person is vitally important. Not being seen or being seen as honorable, not being seen as shameful. You don't want to do anything that would bring shame to your family. Keep that in mind as we talk about the life issues over in India. Typically in a more collectivist type of society, this is the mindset that we'll see. It's about the group, and what does the group think about me? It's all about the external judgment. In a fear power kind of culture, it's all about appeasing or manipulating the powerful, whoever you fear, and understanding how to get in good with the people who have the power. And again, this would be more of a collectivist kind of society. A lot of the communist societies, that would be the mindset there. So, all right, so that lays another piece of the foundation. Now you get to meet Sven. So yeah, Sven is not Norwegian. Sven's wife Arna there is next to him, and then Dake is Sven's uncle, and then David is Sven's brother. So, and these, Sven, Dake, and David are the pastors of 3 of the main churches there in this area that I go to. So I probably should have talked about that just real briefly. So Tanaku is the main town that I visit, and that is kind of the hub of this group of about 100 LCMC congregations over there. And then I also make a trip about 6 hours and about 150 miles. And it is not because of the traffic is like the traffic here in Orlando, it's because the roads are just horrible. But this other group that's about 6 hours away has about 50 LCMC congregations. And so when I go over there, I'll do pastor's conference, a woman's conference, and lately the theme has been more and more about life issues, and talking about, especially the pastor's conferences. They want to know, how do we address these topics from the pulpit, and how do we minister to people that are dealing with different issues? And we'll talk about those issues a little further on. So that's another piece of the foundation here. So what does an orphanage look like? Well, there you go. Inside that red circle there is the orphanage that I visit in Tanaku. It's up on the 7th floor of a building. So that little piece is where the kids live. That open area, you'll see that in a little bit, that is an open area. So playing badminton up there is interesting. Or playing volleyball with a balloon is very interesting. You don't want to get too close to the edge. I'll show you that in a minute. But yeah, so they don't have a lot of playroom, but they are very content where they live. This is that particular orphanage. Up until a year and a half ago, there were 17 kids living in this basically 3-bedroom apartment. Swen and Arna had their 1-bedroom here next to the kitchen. The girls had their bedroom with a bath, and then the boys had their bedroom and a bath. The city officials found out, and they said, no, you can't have that many unrelated kids, minor kids living together. So now they have 2 of these apartments, and the boys live in one and the girls live in the other, and they've increased now to have 22 kids between the 2 apartments. This is the common area. So this common area here in the center, this is what that common area looks like. It is not the size of this room. It is the size of, like a third of this room. But here they're getting together. They're praying before meals. They have one of the kids pray before the meal. They sit on the floor and eat their meals, and they'll eat it with their hands. The curry and the rice and the dal and all the stuff, they'll just mix together with their hands and just eat it. This particular trip, this was about 5 years ago. I took one of the members of the congregation I serve, took Doug and his daughter Jen with me, and they had a wonderful time. The kids still to this day, there's like 3 or 4 of them left who were around at this time, but I'll show up and all this fanfare and where's Jen? Why didn't you bring Jen along? Well, thanks a lot. I just traveled here. It took me 3 days to get here, but all you care about is Jen. Yeah, thanks. But it's wonderful. There was such a great connection that they made, and they love having me there too. But it's just funny how much they cared about Jen. And so here's that same space looking the other direction there. So once again, just they gather together for all their meals, and even now when they're in 2 different apartments, the boys come on up and have the meal with all of us together. So yeah, this was a picture of, this is what the outside of that orphanage looks like. In a minute I'll show you what the other direction. So this is, remember that building way up on top there? Well, this was the outside of that. In a minute I'll show you what that play area looked like. When I go over, so typically I try to go around Christmas time, and so neighboring church, actually Erica left already, but Erica's husband is the pastor of a neighboring church, and so between the church he serves and the church I serve, the 2 of our congregations support this orphanage. And so we'll take up a special offering to take money over there, and this is what ensues then. We get to take the kids to a clothing store to buy them clothes for Christmas. And so the clerks there are just inundated. The kids want to try on everything, and I have 5 daughters, and so the girls here are just absolutely like a daughter, because they want to try on all the frilly dresses and all the, they can be princess for a day, because otherwise they wear clothes. You can buy clothes by the pound there. They have all these stores that there's a huge factory just outside of town where you can buy all the seconds for like 20 cents a pound for the clothes, and that's what they wear most of the time. But you take over $500 and all 22 of the kids are going to get some new clothes. And so then once they buy or get their new clothes, they wear them from morning to night, and even into bed at night sometimes. So they are just beaming. They're so proud of these new clothes that they get to wear. So they're enjoying their time there with Jen. Here's Doug leaning on, remember that area, the play area that I was talking about? This is the wall around that play area. And so this is what separates them from sure and certain death if they take one step too many chasing after the shuttlecock, playing badminton. And then, so Doug was leaning against the wall, and one of the kids ran over and, don't lean on that wall, because it is not very structurally sound either. So, yeah. One of my trips, this is Divya, one of my trips over there, somebody thought, well, it's Christmas, let's send candy canes. So I took candy canes over. They had no idea what a candy cane was. And so I gave each of them a candy cane. These kids, you know, it's a collectivist thing. They all share everything. And for them to get something different is a huge treat and a huge honor, especially something brought to them from the United States. But Divya, the very first thing she did when she got this was she broke off a little piece to give to each of us before she tried it for herself. She wanted to honor us. Remember the honor shame culture? She was wanting to honor us by giving us something. So it just kind of makes my heart sing a little bit just to see just that sacrificial giving and the just her perspective on things. And this is what I get to do a lot too, is just hang out with the kids and just, you know, play. My grandpa and I used to play this all the time. We would call it carom, where you'd these little pucks and you'd flick them with your finger and then try to get them in the corner pocket, and the kids just loved. We played this for hours and hours and hours, and my back side was hurting and from sitting there all that time, but they just absolutely loved it. And just getting a chance to love on the kids a little bit. And you know, being with them and helping them recognize the love of God, the love that God has for them. On each of the trips, we typically will baptize whatever kids have not been baptized yet, and generally that's any of the new kids probably have not been baptized yet in their lives, so we will baptize them. We will either take them from Tanaku there, we'll either take them north about an hour to Rajamundry, where they have a water park, or on special events, we took them to the Indian Ocean. This is about 2 hours away, and now keep in mind, you know, with 22 kids, they don't get out much. They walk to school. 4 or 5 blocks one direction for the elementary school, 4 or 5 blocks the other direction for the high school. So they don't get out of town because they don't have cars to be able to do this stuff. And so we'll rent 3 larger SUVs and pile all the kids in there and take them to the beach for a picnic and then play in the ocean for a while, and they just have a blast. It's something they talk about for years. I mentioned that I talk about life issues, and so one of the trips I took fetal model sets like we have here. I took one to Tanaku and one to Gudapadu and then one down to Abdul's place down in Kerala, and just to help them recognize the sanctity of life and that human development that's going on. So life issues we're going to talk about now quickly. So orphans in India, there are about 30 million. This was an estimate before COVID. Since COVID, they're anticipating at least a 25% increase in the number of orphans. A variety of causes of children being orphans. In the United States, we typically think orphan means both of their parents died somehow. You know, that's kind of our operating principle. That's not really the case all the time in India. Sometimes it's just that their parents can't afford to keep them, and so they will just put them out on the street. One of my one of the little girls who just absolutely stole my heart on my first trip to Gudapadu, Brianka. They found her wandering the streets of Kasuro, a decent-sized city. She was just wandering around in her underwear. She was 4 years old, and so somebody brought her to the orphanage, and her parents were still alive, but they just couldn't afford to keep her anymore, and so they just put her out on the street. One or both parents may die. We'll talk about some other life issues, but the cause of death may be alcoholism or drug abuse, or just not having access to proper health care, and so they die from some disease that would probably be very curable. So health care is certainly an issue. Suicide is rampant. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So that's another cause of these orphans. Adoption is nearly impossible. Remember, again, this is an honor-shame culture. So all international adoptions have been called off because it's a shame thing that you can't take care of your own children. And so if you don't make people aware of it, it's not a problem. So international adoptions don't work. Internal adoptions, where do you start with 40 million kids? And so there's just not the infrastructure to be able to handle adoption through the state systems. So that's very much a life issue that we talk about. Abortion. Worldwide, according to WHO statistics, World Health Organization statistics, there's about 73 million abortions annually around the world. 61% of unintended pregnancies ends in abortion. Abortion in many countries is another form of birth control, or is the form of birth control. I won't go further into that just for the sake of time, but about 29% of all pregnancies worldwide end in abortion. So almost 1 out of 3 children are aborted worldwide. In India, it's legal up to 24 weeks. The Lancet has put together some estimated statistics because the healthcare system being so fragmented, it's hard to get good statistics. Plus, many of the abortions are the literal back alley abortions because who has money to go see a doctor? So they will take care of things themselves. So the estimate is in 2015 was the latest year that I could get statistics on. For this statistic anyway, 15.6 million abortions in 1 year. Yeah, it's a huge issue. But because of poverty, because of all the other things that we've talked about already, it's rampant. And I'll give you some more reasons why abortion is practiced so much in India in a minute here. 13 women per day died in unsafe abortions. In 2021, this was the 3rd leading cause of death for women in India, was because of bad abortions. Abortion in India is very gender specific. Even though when you walk into a hospital or a clinic, they have a placard up there that's mandated by the government saying that they do not practice gender-specific abortions. They practice gender-specific abortions. Girls are way more aborted than boys. For a few reasons. There's still a dowry system there, and so what parent can afford a dowry? They also have, they're very utilitarian. Girls don't bring in as much money as a boy does, and they can't be as productive in that culture as a boy can be. So little girls get aborted very frequently in India. Some other life issues. Alcoholism. I told you that the area that I go to is very agricultural. And the climate in India, where I go, they have monsoon season, huge rainy season, and then they'll have dry season. And if the rainy season isn't as rainy as it should have been, you don't get much for crops. And so farmers will borrow money to buy seed. They'll plant the seed and it doesn't produce the crop. Now they don't have money to pay back that loan. So maybe after a year or two of that, the banks get increasingly more demanding of getting their money back. Again, because of that honor and shame culture, they are ashamed. There is no way that they would declare bankruptcy or seek some of the protections that maybe some of our farmers do. And plus, the government doesn't provide the crop insurance and some of the other things that we have in the United States. And so, first step is they will turn to alcoholism because it dulls the pain of that shame. Now they're adding to the shame, but they drink in their homes. They certainly wouldn't go to the bar to drink. They would drink in their own homes. And so alcoholism is a huge life issue to deal with, which then, I should have put these in a slightly different order. So let me jump. Alcoholism will then lead to domestic abuse. Very frequently. Domestic abuse is just rampant. The father is stressed because he cannot repay that loan that's come due. So he turns to alcohol and to try to dull that. And the kid just does not quit crying and does not quit asking him, but I'm hungry, Daddy. Can't you do something for me? But I need this. And so the abuse starts, and then the mother can't get the kid to shut up. So the abuse continues, and again, all of this stuff happens inside the home because it would be shameful for this to happen outside the home. So it's all happening inside the home. And finally, it gets to the point where the father just can't take it anymore. He commits suicide because he is so ashamed of the situation in which he finds himself. He doesn't see any other possible solution. One of the practices that has been borrowed from the Hindu culture is that when a husband commits suicide, quite often the wife will throw herself on the funeral pyre because she has no career options ahead of herself other than prostitution or something else that's very shameful. So she will take her own life by throwing herself on the funeral pyre. Now you have orphans. So all of these things are tied in together. It's just one thing leading to the other. Human trafficking is a huge issue there because you have all these kids on the street. They get picked up by a trafficker who in India, the most common use for children who are being trafficked is for labor. So they will go work in the garment factories or in the shoe factories or whatever, and so they will be trafficked for labor. Some of them will be taken from India and taken to other places in the Middle East for military. They'll give them a gun and say, okay, defend yourself. So the military service in other countries. And then when they get a little bit older, both the boys and the girls will be sold into sex trafficking as well. So disabilities are huge life issues there too, because again, the medical conditions are not good, and so there is not good prenatal care, perinatal care. So a lot of difficulties surrounding malnutrition during pregnancy. So things that you need to think about there. There isn't the infrastructure to take care of people with disabilities, and so quite often they will die because they can't take care of themselves. But some make it. Many of them will beg along the streets. You know, we read in Scripture about the people who would beg at the gates of the city of Jerusalem or other cities. That happens all the time there too. You will see people constantly begging. They'll, in Satnapali, there's a bunch of guys who their legs are completely shriveled up, and they have these boards that are probably about 18 inches by 18 inches on wheels, and they'll scoot themselves along the ground, and they'll tap on the window of the car that you're in, and with a tin cup, wanting you to give them some money. So there's a lot of begging there, but the life issue of recognizing the value of all people, regardless of their ability. Now they have to swallow their pride to beg, so that's one area where they've overlooked their cultural honor, shame, because it is not honorable to be begging, but they have no other way to live. And so for them to just take that first step to be vulnerable and to do something that would be shameful is huge. But man, okay, so you give them something for today, but what about tomorrow and 350 days from now? How do they support themselves from in that place? So I'm racing through this to try to get through, just to keep us somewhat on schedule. But so what do we do? What can we do? And I know always the first step is to pray. Don't forget in your prayers, your daily prayers, to remember people in different situations. Certainly we pray for the people in the United States who are victims of human trafficking, or who have experienced abortion, or who are making a tough decision, or whatever. But also remember our brothers and sisters on the other side of the world who are experiencing similar but very different life issues. Money's easy in the United States. We can write a check for $100 and send it off, and then say, okay, well, I've done my part. I feel good about myself. Look what a great person I am. But there's so much more that we can do also. I'll talk a little bit about mission trips here in a minute, but demonstrating your love and your support, sending candy canes, something silly like that. The women at Bethany Lutheran, the Erica's husband's church, they'll write Christmas cards with the name of each of the children, so that each child gets a Christmas card, because it's something that they have. And I'll go over there, and they'll open up their Foot Locker, and they will have the cards that I've brought them for the last 5 or 6 or 7 years, because it's something that they alone have. It's not something that it's not, I bring 100 some bars of soap, and it's not something that was given, they just happened to get this one bar. This card had their name on it. And so it's something to honor them, that somebody on the other side of the world cared enough to send me a card. So think about the culture, and learning about the culture and how it would play, your gift might play into that culture, and might be seen in a different type of culture. Vet any mission trips. So many mission trips that you hear about are, you spend 10 days in a place, and you spend 1 day driving past an orphanage, and the rest of the time you're out doing all these other things. I would encourage you, whether it's India or Africa or South Dakota, to the Indian reservations or wherever. Vet the mission trips and ask, okay, so how much time are we going to actually spend doing mission work? Or is this more just a chance to see the scenery and go to Africa and go on a safari and do all the other things and you just drive by the orphanage? How much time are you actually doing in actual mission work and getting to spread the love of God and talk about what God has done for you, talk about what God has done for them, and sharing the gospel with people. And be really careful about the mission trips. Find out what's involved. I go by myself usually. I took Doug and Jen on that one trip, and then Doug went the following year, but otherwise it's always pretty much been by myself, because so often you get sucked into just the glamour of the mission trip, and you don't actually get to do any mission work. And so just be careful, I guess. If you want to get involved in a mission trip, do it, please. It will absolutely change your life. Jen, Doug's daughter Jen, got married a couple years ago, and she and her husband they probably won't go. Well, I know they won't go this year, but we are so close to doing a trip together next year, because Jen, it changed her life to be able to see the conditions, but also to see the joy and to worship with the people there, and to make a difference in their lives also. It just, silly things like playing carom in the afternoon, or letting the kids read to you and practice their English skills with you, or doing the pastors' conference, or so now in the Lutheran churches that I visit, they don't have a seminary. They have an apprenticeship program, and somebody in the congregation looks to be a good, smart person who can read Telugu. They're the next pastor, and the current pastor will start training that person up to be the next pastor, just because they don't have the money or the ability to go off to seminary forever. And so when I do these pastors' conferences, we in 2017 spent a day talking about the Reformation and what does this mean to be Lutheran. And so we did kind of high-level Book of Concord, talking. But now lately, it's been all about life issues. How do you minister to a family whose the dad committed suicide, and the wife, according to their culture, should have also committed suicide. Now she's living with the guilt that she didn't commit suicide, but she can't make ends meet because there's no work to do. So how do you as a pastor minister into that situation? And we talk about stuff like that. How do you look for signs of domestic abuse or alcoholism, or so those kinds of things are what we talk about, and try to equip the pastors to work in those environments. So I have really whipped through this quickly. I tried to get there. Yes, Paula.
I was just thinking, thank you for talking about short-term missions, because that's one of the complaints I've heard, especially with the high school, college missions.
Yeah.
They go to an orphanage, they love the kids, they disappear, they never see them again. So thank you for your commitment for going and holding yourself to account, as well as being involved in their lives for so long.
I WhatsApp with those kids almost every day. Oh yeah. WhatsApp is a huge app, and so it's Yeah, and they can record messages, voice messages, and send them and stuff. And so I'll record yes, I'm looking forward to you. I'll be there on December 4th, and whatever. So, yeah, yes, sir.
I noticed the posters in the background were in English.
Yeah.
Do the people, is there an enclave there of English speaking, or do you speak their language?
No, no, I'm way too old to learn another language. But all the English is mandatory in the schools, and I've read their English textbooks, and their English textbooks are pretty bad. But at least they get an exposure to the English language, and to learn English. If you can learn to be a good English speaker, and if you can get rid of your accent, you have a huge career opportunity. Hyderabad, which is about 8 hours away from Tanaku. If you get tech support, and the old joke of talking to tech support in India, you were talking to somebody in Hyderabad almost definitely. And so if you can learn English and get rid of the Indian accent, you have a real opportunity to make some huge money and get out of that. So the kids, as I mentioned, the kids love to practice their English, and so they'll come up and try to carry on a conversation with me, and I'll say, well, okay, yeah, but in the United States we would say it this way, or it's if you've taken any foreign language, like German, it's not subject, verb, predicate. The word order is different, and so quite often their word order is different in Telugu, and so they'll speak English the way that they would have the word order in Telugu, and so it's quite often it will be subject, predicate, verb, and you have to wait through this whole thing for the verb finally. So it's kind of coaching and helping them with English, but yes, back to your original question. Sorry to rant, but they can read English, and a lot of it is for the publicity. They recognize that taking a picture of this guy standing in front of this sign and putting it up on Facebook will get them noticed, potentially by other donors and by other people seeing that, wow, there was an American here at this place, so this must be quite a place. So yeah, there's some PR being done there also, but also to welcome the guy who can't read Telugu, and plus those banners, we pay to support that orphanage. So how much of my money are you spending on that stupid banner up there? And it's like $1.20 to make a banner the size of this screen. So it's there's a really favorable exchange rate there. Yes, Virginia.
So you and I talked about this, but when I worked in the corporate world, I worked for Thomson Reuters, which was the old West Publishing, legal publisher. And they moved a lot of their business to India because the government pays for their education, and they have a ton of lawyers over there. And even though we had issues with, they didn't understand the constitutional republic law that we have, they knew parliamentary law because that was what they were teaching. But you would think, because they have those degrees, and a lot of them, because a lot of people just keep going to school, that they wouldn't be in such poverty.
Well, a lot of people go to school, but there are still a lot of people. And 10th grade is basically graduation. And that's when, and then you can go on to community college for 11th and 12th, and then on from there. But once you get to 6th grade, at the end of the year, you have to take a standardized test. And if you don't pass that test, you're done with school. So there was a scandal here a few years ago where they caught some parents climbing the outside of the building, feeding answers to their kids who were inside taking the tests, because it's really important that you pass that test to be able to go on to the next level of education. So yeah, there's a lot of attorneys and there's a lot of engineers and a lot of other smart people. There's a lot of smart people, but that's still a small fraction of the total population. And so the people who had to drop out after 6th grade, what do they do? I could talk so much longer.
So were those kids in the orphanage wards of the government?
No, they were just cast out on the street. The government had there are government orphanages, and the last number that I saw was that they housed 350,000 kids, but that's 350,000 out of 15 million orphans. So yeah, no, it's just a drop in the bucket. So yes.
I've read about anti-conversion laws. Do you ever have to be, when you're over there, are you concerned that, being a Christian might get you into legal trouble?
Yeah, I don't remember, I've talked to so many people, but the trip that I took last December, after I got done preaching at my 9th service, the pastor said, "You realize what you just did was illegal." And yeah, so yeah, non-natives can't preach, but you cannot. It's illegal for someone to try to convert a Hindu to Christianity. I'll take one more minute. Down where Abdul is, remember down in Kerala? That area, Kerala is very lush. It is, and a lot of Europeans will fly down to Trivandrum, or Thiruvananthapuram is the new name of the city, because it's just very lush and jungle rainforest area, and a lot of people from the Middle East, a lot of the Muslims from the Middle East will come over there too, and they'll have a second or a vacation home in Kerala, and so Abdul his dad actually started a college that their specialty is converting Muslims to Christianity. So now what does the government do with something like that? Because the government loves the tax money that comes in from all the Middle Eastern folks coming over, spending obscene amounts of money to buy property and to put up mansions. But they're Muslim and not Hindu, and the Christians who aren't Hindu are trying to convert the Muslims who aren't Hindu, but we really like that money that's coming in and we're not going to cut off that cash cow. So Kerala kind of exists in this little no man's land of, don't ask, don't tell. But in the rest of the country, you do not want to get caught. The only time that I have ever felt genuinely concerned was one Sunday morning. I always preach in David's and Swen's church, and we were transiting from David's to Swen's church, and we turned this corner, and here's all these guys in their red suits, and the red, it's like a red jumpsuit that the Hindus will wear for these big celebrations, and there were 300 of them, and I was dressed like Pastor Rojas. I had my collar, I was in my clerics, and here I'm sitting in the front seat with my Bible and my clerics, and here's this throng of guys in red, and they said, "Duck down," and so I did, and they kept kind of driving through the crowd, and we got through, but it could have gotten really ugly in a hurry, and Prime Minister Modi is, as I mentioned, is putting even more and more pressure on the Christians to just disappear. So, and the Muslims too are being persecuted, but not as much because the Muslims bring that Middle Eastern money to the country. So yeah, Probably one more question. You looked like you were.
I'm just surprised that they would. From what I've learned, if I'm right or wrong, I don't really know, but that the Muslims have been really harsh on the Hindus throughout history. The Hindu Kush is where millions of Hindus were simply slaughtered and what have you. I mean, is that? I just can't imagine now accepting because I got a few bucks. Once you come and live in my neighborhood, you'd think it'd be completely untrusted.
Well, keep in mind that Kerala is about 1,500 miles away from Delhi, and Prime Minister Modi is up in Delhi, and so out of sight, out of mind. He loves the money more than he hates the Muslims, in that sense, and they could just kind of tolerate their existence. The Muslims certainly don't exist up near Delhi. There's a few Christians in the outskirts, but the closer you are to Delhi, the worse things are as far as persecution. So, did that help clarify it all, or it's yeah, yeah. And again, it probably doesn't make as much sense to our Western mindset as if we were living it every day, and the chances to raise income tax are practically nil in much of the country because there's not much income, and what income there is day labor cash. The big cities, Hyderabad and the places that have the tech centers, there's income there, but you can only squeeze so much blood out of those turnips. So it's just a tough environment. So be praying for our brothers and sisters all over the world, really. That's kind of the bottom line. And so I hope it helped think about life a different way. So, all right.